Set within the grim dark future of the 41st millennium, Fat Shark gave Imperial citizens a taste of their new title, Darktide, with a closed beta between the 14th and 16th of October. With 17 hours in that beta, I'll be looking at the good, the bad, and the ugly. But, before we talk about the game, let's take a quick glance at Fat Shark. Fat Shark was founded in 2008 in Stockholm, Sweden. In their early years, they set out to focus on delivering downloadable games for the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, with their first release being Lead and Gold Gangs of the Wild West. Gangs of the Wild West would be received well by critics. By 2011, their plan to release 4 or 5 games had fallen behind due to underestimating just how costly it was getting games approved for download on console. At the time, the only other game they had released was Bionic Commando Rearmed 2. They would go on to release a string of games with mixed response, till 2015 when they had a breakout hit with Warhammer End Times Vermintide, selling more than 500,000 units. They would quickly capitalise on the success with a sequel, Vermintide 2, in 2018. Though the sequel would have a poor state of launch with a lot of performance issues, the game would sell over 500,000 copies in 4 days, 1 million within 4 weeks, and it finally breached the 2 million mark by the end of 2019. Vermintide would continue to have a strong community as the game saw continuous updates from expansions, to cosmetics, to new character classes. It seems that Fat Shark found its stride with the Warhammer franchise. In early 2019, Tencent would acquire a 36% stake within the company, which they would then further acquire a majority stake as of January 2021. With Fat Shark cooked, let's take a look at Darktide itself. Let's start with the bad. The most obvious thing from the get-go with Darktide is the lack of characters. Unlike the Vermintide games this is based off of, Darktide turned away from giving us a cast of distinct characters for an MMO-style create-your-own reject system, with attempts to make it interesting by giving them their own personalities based off of the backstory you create. This approach ultimately falls flat, with dialogue being a mixed bag of mostly bad or offensively bad, with a few decent lines scattered in. Sadly feels like a step back from Vermintide, which was known for its colourful cast of fun characters. One thing they did borrow from Vermintide is its poor optimisation. Whilst I had no issue running the game, many friends had trouble running on slightly less powerful machines. Loading times ranged from poor to great, seemingly on a whim, and when frames dropped, animations would start playing at seemingly different frame rates, and would even play out of sync with the game's ammo counters. Stability of the beta was also terrible, with frequent crashes and disconnects which could even lose your gear. These crashes and disconnects could happen at literally every part of the game, which was frustrating when I would experience disconnects on the post-game screen, often losing me the loot I'd just earned. The most annoying bug I had was upon completing the last weekly contract, which should have netted me a load of currency, it instead reset all my contract and never paid out the currency. Clarity and information in the beta build was also not forthcoming. Description of weapons, what they did, and what their special attacks were completely lacking. Making informed decisions was difficult, as the same weapon could have a different combo chain, but when shown an explosion and 3 arrows with no key, good luck working out what your weapon did. Lads guns would be described as having a bayonet attack, as their special, only for it to be a flashlight. Shotguns had special ammo, whatever that meant. An axe with a special attack, you name it, they didn't explain it. Audio clarity is also just as bad, with enemies almost silently appearing from doors behind you, becoming increasingly frustrating as it became hard to tell where you can stand your ground and when things will spawn behind you. Specials also just aren't as easy to spot or hear coming, with a few exceptions, which is frustrating as there are far more special enemies now. Sadly, to add to the information void, the game lacks ways to see how much ammo your allies have, like they did in Vermintide. Instead, only having voice lines that trigger way too late to tell you who's low on ammo. I'm not expecting handholding in the game, but I do expect it to provide some degree of basic information to be able to make informed decisions. This game gets hectic, and the ability to make quick decisions is hampered because of this, so every player turns into a loot goblin, grabbing every drop of ammo they can take for themselves, regardless of how much they actually have. Controls have been hit and miss, with the melee combat inputs being too sensitive. It's really easy to double push, which can drain all of your stamina, or to accidentally start charging heavy attacks, which in the heat of combat are things that can punish you hugely. A frequent problem me and my friends have had with the beta is that it would not save your keybinds, meaning that every time we crashed, which happened a lot, we'd have to rebind our special attack and tag buttons, which became a big point of frustration. Enemy attack registration was also janky at that point. We aren't really sure if it was connection issues as we couldn't check our ping, but sometimes the enemies seemed to be able to just hit you from further ranges than it looked, and even if you dodge out the way, sometimes you were still getting hit. Furthermore, many of the class-specific perks were not functioning as intended. For instance, the Ogryn's perk that allows you to revive allies without being interrupted by damage flat out didn't work, much to the confusion of Ogryn players who kept trying over and over to revive people in the fight. The visuals of the game were lackluster or not functional in some areas. There was a lot of texture popping, character models not loading properly, and hair specifically being handled really poorly, and just looking really awful. While I had a lot of bad things to say about the game so far, I do genuinely like this game and had a lot of fun despite the issues. The combat, when working properly, is fun as all hell. With the already good melee combat from Vermintide, but with a far better, more punchy ranged combat system where the guns actually feel good to use and can even be used more liberally. The new toughness system is a good solution to the fact that there are far more ranged enemies now too, giving a protective shield that is refilled by staying near your allies or getting melee kills. This helps prevent the combat from getting bogged down into a lot of careful cover shooting and helps melee classes stay relevant. However, in exchange, being downed or taking certain types of damage gives you cursed health, which can only be restored at the medical stations dotted around the missions. The loot system has been changed, in my opinion, for the better. Instead of collecting grims and tomes every level to ensure you get the best loot boxes to open at the end, you instead are given flat currency for completing objectives, which then goes to a store that rotates stock every hour. There you're able to choose to buy equipment based on your level and power level. This ability to choose what you get provides far more control. Than the previous systems, and help you guarantee improved stats. The highest level of loot, however, is kept in a different store where you can complete weekly challenges for another currency. This store updates every 24 hours instead, but contains the more coveted legendary gear. The beta only includes 2 bosses in the game. The Plague Ogryn, which spawns randomly on levels, and the Scav boss, who is a mission-specific boss. While the Plague Ogryn feels very similar to the bosses of Vermintide, the Scav boss would often have different gear and names on each run. While it doesn't change things hugely, if this is used on more bosses in the game, it could help break up some of the repetitiveness that's always present in this type of game, and I think it might be a step in the right direction. Now, one of the game's biggest strengths is its absolute banger of a soundtrack. This blend of techno and orchestral music really helps sell the industrial nature of the areas you're playing in, with a great beat to fight to. I really like this mix of classic Warhammer orchestral style music, mixed with some more techno beats, as it feels fresh yet familiar. If the rest of the soundtrack follows through, Darktide may have one of the best OSTs for a Warhammer game going. Hell, it might even become one of my favourite game's OSTs. Be ugly. Sometimes you see a decision made by a dev, but you really have to question what they were thinking when they implemented it. In this case, it's a commonly seen system which most other multiplayer games have, a censorship system. I understand the basic need to try and prevent racism and excessive toxicity, but the game seems to take the piss with this one. An auto-generated name a friend rolled was Dickens. However, the game didn't know what to do and denied the use of the name because it had the word dick in it. Other words supposedly included were things like sniper, a special enemy in the game. Then, there's the social hub. Vermintide 2 had a nice little hub world for your party to mess around in, test out gear and so on. But they also had a convenient system where you could access any of the vendors or functions at a key's press. No need to walk halfway across the map to speak to someone. Darktide so far has decided not to include this. So every time you want to access any of the vendors, you have to run over to the shop. And playing multiple missions in a row, this gets frustrating as you have to keep running over to the mission terminal. Not to mention there seems to be nothing social about the social hub. You can run, you can RP walk, and you can have text chat. Hell, your party members don't even appear in the same hub world. The whole thing seems more of a mental trap, showing you other players and their cosmetics, likely to try and have encouraged spending money on skins. Currently, we don't know what the game's business model will be, or how cosmetics will be earned beyond the basic level up sets. I do have concerns at the your character approach. There may be more of a live service model, with all the bells and whistles that come with, but this is just speculation as many of the systems weren't in the game to clarify. The social area does seem to need marked improvement though, with the ability for emotes, maybe even games like poker or something to play with people. Just something to give it some reason to exist other than just an inconvenience, and to show off other players' cosmetics. The TLDW. Darktide has a solid gameplay base and an amazing soundtrack. It needs a lot of technical problems polished out before release. Vermintide fans may be disappointed by the lack of character. I would have no trouble recommending Darktide so long as its launch date is more stable and there are no egregious monetization systems. Final verdict: promising.